All right. Just about ready to go. Testing. Hello. All right. We're all set? Good? All right. So, hello, everybody. My name is Wade Warren. I teach a Sunday school class here on Sunday mornings and sit over here in my seat, you know, like a good Baptist, same place every week. I've been teaching a series of summer stuff here at Kingsville for working on 7 or 8 years, something like that. So if I don't know you or you don't know me, my full-time job is faculty member at Louisiana Christian University, where I teach in the biology department. So I always like to start the summer set with showing you guys some of the resources that I have used. So no different this summer. 2 books that a lot of the information that I'll be sharing have come from. So this overview book on the left-hand side of the screen here by Amy Peeler, an overview paperback on the book of Hebrews, been very helpful. And then, of course, in the last session for the summer, we're going to make our way to the mysterious figure from Genesis 14, Melchizedek. And so this book by Josh Matthews has been really helpful. I got everything that I know I did not discover, I just read. And so, but I like sharing these things. I'm a teacher, so I like to share these things with people, so appreciate the opportunity. For those of you who would like to get a jump start on next week's session, there is a podcast, a Bible Project podcast called Babbling Babies. And so next week, we're going to talk about babbling babies. I was trying to get your interest in next week's session. If you've not listened to that, it'll get you jump started on next week. Or you think, well, how is that related to Hebrews? Well, you'll see shortly. So I want to show you where we're going with this. Resources that are really valuable to me in my life with Bible study. On the left here, the Logos software, which I've been using for many years now. I assume if you're here and you know what these Sunday night sessions are, where I'm doing any kind of teaching, sound like that you're here specifically because I just assume, if you're in this room, you are a Bible nerd, right? This is a session for people who want to dig. So the Logos Bible software is such a powerful tool. I'm going to show you a new tool tonight that I've discovered over the past year that I use regularly now. And if you'd like to get it, it costs several $100s to get it. But man, it's so useful. However, there's also a free app that I recommend really highly. On the right-hand side here, called Literal Word. And so I very much like to say something to the group, whether it's the young people on Sunday mornings or here in the Sunday evening session. I like to say something and then say, you know what? You check my work. Would you? Would you check my work? So I just ask you, if you don't have this free app and you have your phone and you're willing to do it, if you'll go ahead and get that app on your phone so that as we're doing some things tonight, I can interact with you some. Say, would you look this up? Look at this verse. Click on this word. And so you can help verify, right? If he's saying something, show me. So you can do that with Literal Word, and I'll use that tonight as well during the second half of our time together. So the first 2 weeks, here's the title, Jesus is Better Than the Angels. So we're going to finish tonight talking about angels. If you have in your mind a picture of angels, like you get from television or even working your way all the way back to medieval art and literature, you have a picture of this glowing figure with wings flying around. That is not the Bible image of an angel. So when we compare Jesus to angels, that's not what we're talking about. So I want to get that done tonight at the very end, because once a person has in their mind what the Bible really means when it uses this word, angels, then when you read Hebrews chapter 1, it lands in a completely different way. Like it makes Jesus something much bigger once you realize what the authors are talking about. So that's going to be our main focus for the first 2 weeks. So you can see here the verses from Hebrews chapter 1 and 2. Wade, why did you title the first 2 week sessions, Jesus is Better Than the Angels? Well, because we're talking about the book of Hebrews and the main thrust. So I put the verses in here so you can see it. The author of Hebrews is comparing Jesus to angels. So that's what we should do. All right, so that's the first 2 weeks. In the third week, we're going to go to Hebrews chapter 3, and you can see here that the author of Hebrews is comparing Jesus to Moses. So we're going to do that for week 3. First 2 weeks, Jesus is compared to angels. He's better than the angels. This is what the Hebrew author would want us to hear. Jesus is better. Week 3, Jesus is better than Moses. Now, that would land a little bit differently on a Jewish audience. But we know how important Moses is, and so the Hebrew author is comparing him, and we're going to do the same together in week 3, talk about faith. In weeks 4 and 5, we're going to make the statement that Jesus is better than the priests. And so you can see starting in chapter 3 straight through chapter 7, the author is making a real concerted effort to compare Jesus to the priesthood. And so the summary there is Jesus is better than those. He's better than the priesthood from the line of Aaron. He is better. You should start your thinking about Jesus in this weird narrative in Genesis 14 about Melchizedek. And so we're going to do some of that together during weeks 4 and 5. All right, so there you go. That's it for me for the summer. This, I know, is maybe a little bit too small, but I copied whole chapter 1 here because I want to make a statement here. Can you guys see the yellow? The yellow highlighted on this image are the words that are directly copied and pasted from the Old Testament in Hebrews chapter 1. You see why I wanted to show you this? Because the author of Hebrews assumes that the reader has a lot of background knowledge. Now, if you're like me, or I would say if you're a normal person, you're not carrying around this background knowledge the way the author expects. So, for the first half tonight, we are going to just deep dive into the Old Testament text behind the end of the days here. This is the first phrase. And we're just going to meditate and read and just think about those things. Once we've got that in the background of our minds, the author of Hebrews would say, now you're ready to compare Jesus to the angels. So there's some assumption here about what we know. And here it is. I didn't know these things, so I will share them with you. It's background knowledge. It's coming from the Old Testament texts. Okay, that's the first thing. So I did the math on the words here in English. It's like almost 50% of the words are from the Old Testament. The second thing I want you to notice here, I've got it underlined, is that something I've already said for week 1 and 2 is you can see in the text here that the author has done everything here in this chapter to compare Jesus to the angels. And y'all see that? Over and over again. He's better than the angels. He's better. He says this is the Son, but he says this is the angels. Okay, so that's where we're going to finish tonight. Now, when we start next week, I'm going to start with this right here. And we're going to look at what the scriptures mean when they talk about the Son of God and the Son of Man. So I've used some stuff out of Dr. Coral's commentary for that as well. We're just going to spend a little time doing that because really what the author's doing is the author's comparing Jesus, who the author thinks is both the Son of God and the Son of Man. He's both human and divine. And he wants to compare that figure, that Son, to the angels. And the big climactic moment is in chapter 2 when the Son of Man imagery is used in a quotation from Psalm chapter 8. And that's where we're going to run into babbling babies next week in Psalm chapter 8. Okay, everybody good so far? It's time to start. We're 10 minutes in. Hebrews chapter 1, verse 1. God, after he spoke long ago to the fathers and the prophets in many portions, in many ways. Greek phrase here, in these last days, has spoken to us in his Son. Now, I'm going to show you this, but I'm going to say it first. So, this Greek phrase is used sparingly in the New Testament. And you can see in the wording of this phrase in the New Testament, I'm going to show you how I did it in Logos. It's coming, just a second. You'll be able to see that when, put my glasses on so I can see you. When a New Testament author uses these words, it is supposed to ignite in the reader all kinds of information. The phrase itself can be used both to mean a time that is yet to come. Maybe we would use the phrase in English, the end times. It can mean that. So I think 3 or 4 times the New Testament's used that way. In the last days, the author would say, there will be scoffers and there will be mocking and there will be, stuff is going to happen in what we would consider to be apocalyptic kinds of, at the end time. The phrase can also be used to mean like right now. And that's how the Hebrew author is using it here. You can see, Jesus just came And God spoke to us in his Son. This just happened, and you all know it. So I say this every summer. I'll say it again here in the first session. A Hebrew mindset, which this author definitely has, does not have any trouble with this. To say that it has already happened and it is going to happen and it's the same thing in a Hebrew mind is, of course, I can keep that all in my head. I'm a very left-brained person, and I like to say things like, well, either it did or it will, but it can't be both. And the Hebrew author would just say, you're so naive, Wade. You're so naive. You're so simple-minded. Of course it did happen. Of course it's going to happen. Of course it is happening. And so all of that is tied up in this phrase, in the last days. So these are the Greek words. I memorized them so I could pronounce them for you, but I decided I'm not going to do that. It doesn't help anybody unless somebody was here who knows Greek. I know there's a couple people in the room that might benefit from hearing it, but I'm not going to do it. The Hebrew phrase matches here in several places, same exact phrase in Hebrew. And what would the author to the Hebrews want us to do when the author uses this phrase? Imagine all of the things that this phrase would bring up in your mind so that now you can take all of that information and paste it right on Jesus and go, oh yeah, that's him. Now let me compare him to the angels. All right, how's everybody doing? Y'all doing okay so far with all that? All right. Now, Wade, do you have any other evidence that the author wants us to do this? Like, take a minute and meditate and pause and think about what this phrase means. What images are supposed to come up in my head? Yeah, there's more evidence of this. And this comes from Amy Peeler's book. You can see here in verse 8 of chapter 1, there's a quotation. The quotation comes from Psalm 45. Okay, so warning, alert. I started to bring a red flag whenever I do stuff like this, but it's going to be pretty much the whole session tonight, so I just have to keep the red flag up. So here's, the red flag warning right here. This is about to get really nerdy. But I know you people love to do this. Many of you have talked to me about this, and you say, man, that was so much fun. Okay, and I so totally agree, because my heart is just so encouraged whenever I see how wonderful Jesus is. That's what the whole point of this is. Okay, so Psalm 45, you say, Wade. All right, so you ready? Red flag warning, nerd alert. Okay, so Psalm 45 has a superscription in it right here that says, for the choir director. And you all go, of course, all the Psalms are songs, right? So here's the question. The author to the Hebrews has selected all these Old Testament quotations. The first long quote, extracting 2 whole verses from a psalm, comes from Psalm 45. What would you know if you were a geek and knew a lot about the Old Testament scriptures here? Well, and this is from Shepherd's commentary on the Minor Prophets, just so you can see. I like to show you guys where this stuff comes from because I don't want you taking my word for it. You can read this for yourself, if you want to dig. Okay, so Mike says here in his commentary, the translation director comes from the interpretation that the word refers, is everybody following me? The word refers to one who is preeminent in the musical setting. We have people here like that. But the same word can also mean one who endures. Now, what you guys know about the book of Hebrews, this is coming, right? One of the main themes that carries the book is you are going to experience negative life events because of your faith in Jesus. And there's this big encouragement, and the Hebrews author is going to say, hold on, hold on, hold on. One who endures. Now this is apparently reflected in the way, do y'all know what this means right here? The LXX? This is the Greek translation of the Old Testament, which most of the quotations in Hebrews comes from. This Greek translation was written almost 200 years, in part, before Jesus was born. The Septuagint often translates the phrase in the book of Psalms, this Greek phrase, which means, for the end. That is, and I've got this one underlined, it designates the psalm as being for one who endures to the end, the last days. In other words, by using a quotation from Psalm 45 and coupling that together with this phrase at the beginning of the book where he uses the phrase in the last days, you go, okay, this is what you're getting at. Now, that phrase, as it turns out, that phrase is used, you can see here, in a select group of Psalms. Here, in Book 2 especially of the Psalms, 42 and 44 to 49, you can see it here. I've got them listed straight out of the Septuagint. I just copied and pasted right out of the Septuagint. For the end, the last days, the end days. This is on the mind of the author. It's also interesting to note that these Psalms in the Old Testament are Psalms, you can see it here, ascribed to the author of somebody who is from the line of Korah. Now, what story comes to your mind when you hear the word Korah from the Old Testament? If you know the answer to that question, you are a serious nerd. It's this story right here from Numbers chapter 16. The sons of Korah, they get together and they have a revolt against Moses and the leadership. And Moses says everybody needs to get out of the way because God's about to deal with these people. And he opens up the ground and swallows up Korah and all the rebels. And it says that these guys go down alive to Sheol, to the place of the dead. Now, when you pick up these Psalms, and we could have done this in a number of places, but I just wanted you to see it because this is, I'm telling you, in the mind of the Hebrew author, this is all ruminating right now. Hang on to the end. Through any persecution that you experience, trust the Lord. Hang on. Hope. Hope in Jesus. He's better. Hope to the end. Did they all die? Look at this language that's used in this Korah Psalm, Psalm 49. God will redeem my soul from the power of Sheol. He will take me, Selah, which means stop. Think about this for just a minute. These Psalms are riddled. They are riddled with the hope of resurrection. Do you see what I meant by red flag? We just took a deep dive here, but I'm telling you, when the author to the book of Hebrews chooses Psalm 45, all of this is ruminating here. Hold on to the end. Hope in the resurrection. All right. Now, if we were in Sunday school, I would pause here and say, all right, pepper me with some questions because there's a lot more in my head here. But I just want you guys to see all that is behind what is happening here in Hebrews chapter 1. We're going to compare Jesus to angels, but I just wanted to get this out. Okay, now, we are not going to spend all of our time here tonight going through all of the places in the Old Testament that are supposed to be lit up whenever we start reading Hebrews 1. But I've put a few of them in here just so that you can get a sense about what the phrase actually is supposed to take you to. All right. Now, the next 4 slides that you're going to look at are Wade's just showing you. I'm just showing you where this information came from so you can do it yourself if you would like. So this is, you would have to have the Logos software to do this, but can you see this grayed area right here? That's in the last days phrase from Hebrews chapter 1, verse 2. That's the Greek. And in Logos, you can copy a phrase and then search. The search will then identify for you everywhere that phrase is found. In the New Testament and Logos, you can also make it go backwards into the Septuagint and give you the places where the phrase is found. See how powerful that is? That's like, man, I can spend a lot of time with this. I'm looking up these really important phrases. So this is what it looks like. We don't have to go through it. There's 32 results here that come. Notice that when you search the phrase here, in the top 3 results here is a reference to the Lexham Greek English Interlinear Septuagint, specifically from Hosea 3:5. And do you know what that phrase is in Hosea 3:5? I showed it to you a second ago. It's this phrase in Hebrew right here. It's the same phrase in Hebrew as the phrase from Hebrews 1:2. Are you guys following me? I'm just showing you how this works. When I'm searching the phrase in Greek, it takes me to the Septuagint. I go to the Septuagint, and it gives me the same phrase in Hebrew. Now, copy the phrase in Hebrew and search. And here are 55 results. There's a half dozen different commentators and all these different things to read about. And if you go through them, here's what you will discover. In the New Testament, the phrase itself is used in some form in 5 places. In the Old Testament, the phrase is used, I have to be able to mark. In the Old Testament, the phrase is used in all 3 sections of the Old Testament. Does that click for you? All 3 sections? Torah, prophets, and writings. I just thought I would throw that out because it's been a year since we've talked. So hopefully, when I say Torah, prophets, and writings, everybody goes, the entire Old Testament. Yeah? So y'all nod, you got me? The entire Old Testament, Torah, prophets, and writings. How many times, Wade, is the phrase used in the Old Testament? This is nerdy stuff, man. Can y'all see it? 14 times. I mean, it's weird stuff. It's weird Bible stuff. But after you see them a few times, stuff like this, you go, of course. Of course it's 14 times. So I thought to take us up to 535 here, I thought we would just read some of these together. I think the author to the Hebrews would say that would be a good thing to do. Get this stuff ruminating in your head about the end days. Get it in there. Then you go read my book, and you will have much more to ponder and think about what a wonder Jesus is. Yeah? Okay, so let's do a couple. Oh, these are the ones in the New Testament right here, and I already summarized this for you. It can mean something I'm hoping for to come, or it can mean something that is happening. It can be something that, it's a Greek and Hebrew phrase. It's kind of like, it will be and it is. And there it is. I don't know what else to help you with that or to help myself with it, but there it is. Used sparingly in the New Testament. The author to the Hebrews is not thinking about these. The author to the Hebrews is thinking about the 14 references that come out of the Old Testament. Okay, so we'll do a few of them here. Genesis 49 is a poem that basically goes through the sons of Jacob. With each poetic rendering of each son, The author either qualifies or disqualifies. And so if you're reading the poem for the first time, it's like, I have no idea what this is about. But the qualification is specifically there how this person will relate to the end of the days. It is trying to force us to read the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob stories through the lens, thinking about the coming Messiah. That's what the poem is supposed to do to us. He's coming at the end of the days. And y'all, this is where we discover that the messianic figure will come from the line of Judah. This happens in Genesis chapter 49. It sounds like this. Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's sons will bow down to you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He couches, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion who dares rouse him up, the scepter shall not depart from Judah. Perfectly clear, right? It just cracks me up because it's not clear to me, and I have been reading and pondering Genesis 49 for many years now, since it was first introduced to me this way. It's such a beautiful thing. The expectation of the Hebrew reader reading this poem goes, I will read the rest of my Bible paying special attention to the line of Judah. Interestingly enough, this is exactly the way the gospel authors present Jesus, paying attention to this line. This is where it starts. And I think the Hebrew author would say, good job, y'all. This is what y'all want you thinking about Jesus, right? He is the promised seed from the line of Judah. And like Steve said in the baptistry this morning, the scepter will not depart. He looked at this young lady and said, do you believe that Jesus is the King of the universe? And she said, yes. And my heart went, dunk her, Steve. Yeah? This is beautiful. This is where it starts. And I think the Hebrew author wants us going, yeah, man, process the end of the days. Okay, so similar thing happens in Numbers 24. I'll not belabor the point there. I'm skip some of these for the interest of time because we got to get to the angels here to finish tonight. Let's do the one from Daniel. So I had the references on there. Incidentally, everybody has a handout with you? Did Uncle Melvin get everybody a handout? Great. So in the top right-hand corner of that handout, there's a QR code. And if you want to see any of this, you can just take your phone and click that QR code, and you can look at these slides. I should have said that at the beginning tonight. But you can see all of this and more from session 1. All right, this is Daniel chapter 2 where the phrase is used. So you guys will be familiar with this. This is much more apocalyptic kind of stuff. So Daniel is interpreting the dream of the king of Babylon here. And it's not good news for the king. He says, so what I did was I read the chapter where the phrase is used for context, and I just selected the verses out that I could share with you. Now, what would the person speaking like for you to do? Go read the whole second chapter of Daniel here so that you can think about how the author's processing the end of days. In the days of those kings, the God of heaven will set up, I'm right here in Daniel chapter 2, a kingdom which will never be destroyed. And that kingdom will not be left for another people. It will crush and put an end to all these kingdoms. This is the 4 kingdoms in the dream. But it will itself endure forever. This is the one where at the end the stone comes and hits the feet and crushes the statue, and Nebuchadnezzar and the whole thing comes crashing down. Inasmuch as you saw that a stone was cut out of the mountain without hands, and that it crushed the iron, the bronze, the clay, the silver, and the gold, the great God has made known to the king what will take place in the future. So the dream is true, and its interpretation is trustworthy. There's a stone coming, and this stone will crush the kingdoms of the world. It will swell up and encompass the entire world. This stone will. And the kingdom of this stone will never end. The messianic, in the last days thinking phenomenon. So we could just do this, all over the place. But I'm telling you, what will happen to you if you just read these chapters where this phrase is used, it's not infinite. There's 14 of them. And if you just read them, after a while you start going, okay, my mind is now set. I am thinking about the king from the line of Judah. He will be in the Davidic line. That's from Numbers. He will be the stone that crushes the other kingdoms, and his kingdom will never end, from the book of Daniel. This is the imagery that I'm supposed to have in my mind as I read the rest of chapter 1 in Hebrews. All right, so this is the last part for tonight. I'm 5:35 in here. So here's what I'm going to do. If you have Literal Word, would you go ahead and open that app now for me so you guys can interact with me? I see a whole bunch of you doing that. That's great. Open up Literal Word. Okay. So we're in verse 4, having become as much better than the angels, as he has inherited a more excellent name than they. For to which of the angels did he ever say, "You are my son, today I've begotten you"? We're coming right back here next week to do this son thing. But what I want you to notice here in Literal Word, if you're looking at these verses, what I want you to notice is that the Greek word angels here is used every single time the word angel is used. Let me ask you a question. It's in yellow, where did these quotations come from in which the Greek word angel is being used? Where did they come from? In yellow, they came from, this is where we started. They came from the Old Testament. Psalm 2, 2 Samuel 7, Psalm 97, Psalm 104. Does everybody follow me so far? These are quotations from the Old Testament. The Septuagint would have the same Greek word, angel, angelos. Now, group project. Go to Psalm 97:7, where this phrase is copied from, on Literal Word. Go to Psalm 97:7. And where the word angel is there, what is the word in Literal Word? The Hebrew word. Some of you may see that this is translated a little bit differently. We're not going to get into that, but what's the Hebrew word behind angel there? Can y'all find it? Elohim? Gods? Does it say gods in your translation? If you click in the top right-hand corner of Literal Word, where the little Hebrew letter is up in the top right-hand corner, and then click on the word gods there, what do you get in Hebrew? Do you see the word there? What you got? Elohim. Okay, so let's just pause here for just a second. What is the Hebrew word behind the Greek word angels in the Septuagint that turns into the word angels as the Hebrew author uses it in Hebrews? What is the word behind this? God. Elohim. Do y'all see that? This is not the only place it happens. Now, before we start this tonight, before you got here tonight, if I had said the word Elohim to you, what first comes to your mind when I say Elohim? The God of creation, right? That's strange. Don't you find that strange? Okay, so this is worthy of our time right here. We need to spend a little time digging on this word Elohim together. So that's number one, Elohim. The second one we're going to do here comes from Psalm 104, verse 4. Can y'all do that for me? I want to know the answer to the question, what is the Hebrew word behind the word angel that is used in my New Testament? What's the Hebrew word behind it? Do just what you did just now. Messenger. Do y'all see that? The Hebrew word is pronounced malach. Now, put the two together for me. Elohim can be used interchangeably in the text with the word malach. Messenger and God can be used interchangeably. Now, I can see some of you squirming. Don't worry, I'm not fixing to change anybody's theology or anything here. But y'all, once you see this, you go, if it happens to you the way it did to me, once you see this, you go, oh. Verses like John 3:16. His only begotten Son will just light up for you. All right? So let's do it together, yeah? Okay, so I just want to show you, next week, the word angel in the quote from Psalm 2 is also Elohim. This is coming next week. We're not done with this. Yep, babbling babies and the Elohim next week. All right, so here's the word Elohim, and I want to just throw out, y'all, do this for me. You're right there in Psalm. See, I get myself excited. I want to say everything at one time. Just one thing at a time, yes? Okay. So right now you're in Psalm 104. So go to Psalm 8. Go to Psalm 8. Go to Psalm 8 on literal word. And verse 7. And it probably says God there, since that's New American Standard Translation. The Septuagint has angels there. What do you have? Angels is Elohim. Do y'all see that? In verse 7, you have made him for a little while lower than the Psalm chapter 8. Oh, sorry. It's verse 7 in Hebrews. Sorry. Psalm chapter 8, I'm sorry. Verse 5. What is the Hebrew word? Okay, so it's God in English and New American Standard. Elohim. Okay, so same word here. Now, down on literal word, how many verses does it say that word is used in? When you click on the word Elohim, how many? 2,250. Good luck doing a word search on that one. Yeah? So, here I'm dependent on others who have done this. So I have selected a few verses to show you what the spread of meaning is on this word. So we're going to be very, very straightforward on the first one. On the second one, we're going to climb into the weeds a little bit. All right, so here's the first one. Deuteronomy 10:17 says this. So follow me on the screen. For the Lord, Yahweh, your God, God there is Elohim. Immediately I know Yahweh is Elohim. Do y'all see the connection? Yahweh is Elohim. He is the great God of gods. And here the Hebrew word Elohim is used in both places. He is the great Elohim of Elohim. Okay, so here's what you're supposed to get from that. The Creator God is Elohim. But in Hebrew, the word Elohim doesn't delineate Yahweh. Is that okay with you guys? You're okay so far? In other words, if I just say the word Elohim in Hebrew, I can mean Yahweh. But what else can I mean? Little g, gods. It's the same Hebrew word. Everybody following that? Deuteronomy 32:17, here's another example. They sacrificed to demons, the Shadim. I can always remember that in the vocab because shade means darkness. The Shadim. Who were not God. And here the word is Eloah. So Wade, let me get this straight. What you're telling me is I can use different forms of this word Elohim to refer to the God of creation. Now, one last statement, and I don't want to make you crazy, but because we've got to do the angel stuff, but I want you to see this. There's one last statement here. There are 3 different forms of this word used in the Old Testament to reference Yahweh, the Creator God. The one we're talking about, Elohim, is in Hebrew a plural word. When you hear that sound im on the end of the word, it means it's a plural word. Don't let that bother you, because I can say Elohim and mean one thing in Hebrew. Like in Hebrew, if you said the sky, what's up there? That's a plural word, Shemayim. You hear the im at the end, Shemayim? It's literally the skies, but you're just talking about the sky. Same thing. Elohim is plural, but it can mean one thing. But in Hebrew, you can also refer to the Creator God as Eloah or just El. And both of those words are singular. Eloah is used like 60 times, and El is used like 30 times. I forget the numbers. But by far and above, the most common reference to the Creator God is Elohim. Okay, I may have said too much on that. Okay, let's go to the next one so you can see a spread on this. We got to get ourselves to Hebrews 1 here. So Genesis 1:1, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The word is Elohim. If you're a Hebrew reader and you read that, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, and you read Hebrew but you don't know anything else, you've come to the Bible with a blank slate. Nobody's told you anything. You don't know anything except the Hebrew language. And you read that phrase, what's the question that you have in your mind? How many? Which one, right? I mean, it's not clear. Now, that doesn't happen, right? Because the Hebrews know who their Elohim is. He's Yahweh. And the author clears it up in chapter 2. In the day that Yahweh Elohim made the earth and the heavens. So there you go. Who is this Elohim? He is Yahweh. Now, I could have done this in the gods of Egypt thing very easily. Like, whenever the firstborn of all of them are killed in the night, the Passover night, it says specifically that Yahweh was going after the gods of Egypt. And there the word is Elohim. When you get to the 10 Commandments, you get a phrase like this: you shall have no other gods before me. And the word is Elohim. So, if I use the word Elohim, I need to be specific, because the word has a range of meanings. So, we need to come to some consensus here, because in the Septuagint, the word gets translated angels. So what is the author actually thinking by using Old Testament references where the word Elohim is used? Why? Why do that? Here's what I think. I think it's because if you know the language, you're going, Elohim is a class of spiritual beings. Yahweh, as it turns out, is the unique creator God. But there are other gods. Paul calls them principalities and powers, forces of darkness. But they're not all bad. There's also a story in the Old Testament about God having a conversation with his posse, his Elohim, as to what to do with Job. And there's another one about another king in 1 Kings. What do we do with this guy? Anybody want to go down and deceive him? This is a class of Elohim. Now, I'm guessing this is probably new to some of you. But here's why I'm bringing it up, because it's behind what the Hebrew author is saying. And ultimately, here's what's being said. Ultimately, here's what's being said. Of all of the powers and forces and unseen Elohim that exist, Jesus is better. Does that land differently now? He's better. He's the only. The Greek word there in John is the monogenes. In that class of Elohim, he is the unique Yahweh Elohim. It's John's way of saying Jesus is the creator, God. Well, you say, how can he be the Son and the creator? Yeah? Okay, one more thing for the night. I've got 47, I got 13 minutes. One more thing. So we're going to do this Psalm 8 thing, Psalm 8:5 more next week as I introduce the Son to you and the babbling babies. Okay, here's the word that's used, and the next time angels is used in Hebrews 1, the Hebrew word behind it is malach, or messenger. And this word can mean messenger, messengers of God, prophets, priests, angels, the angel of God, or Yahweh himself. Let me show you. This is where things start getting like really crazy, but you guys have stayed with me this long. Give me 13 more minutes. Okay, so the messenger. Okay, number one, the malach in the Hebrew Bible can be just some regular dude. You know, here, I've written a message down. You take it over to this person. That's a malach in Hebrew, a messenger. A regular person. A malach in Hebrew can also be a person, but something really not a person. So Genesis chapter 18, y'all know the story. This is the Sodom and Gomorrah story. The Lord appeared to him, this is Abram, by the oaks of Mamre while he was sitting at the door of the tent in the heat of the day. When he looked up, he lifted up his eyes and looked. Behold, 3 men. Now, if you track the story, one of those men hangs with Abraham. And in chapter 19, the other 2 go to Sodom and Gomorrah. But when you get to chapter 19, it doesn't call them men anymore. It calls them malach, angels. So what you got so far? A messenger can be just some dude, or it can be some dude but not quite a dude, right? Most of our Bibles put angels there. Judges chapter 13. Y'all, we could go on and on with this. This is a fun one. Manoah, this is Samson's daddy. Manoah rose and followed his wife, and when he came to the man, Hebrew, Ish, he said, "Are you the man who spoke to the woman?" He's talking about his wife. And he said, "I am." Manoah said, "Now, when your words come to pass, what will be the boy's," asking about Samson, "what will be the boy's mode of life and his vocation?" And then the author just switches gears and says, so the angel of the Lord said to Manoah, like, okay, well, is he a man or is he the angel of the Lord? And the answer to that question is yes. Manoah didn't even get it. And then they do this weird sacrifice thing, and the angel goes poof into the fire. And Manoah goes, oh my word, I've seen God. I'm going to die. He's an angel. I'm trying to imprint in your minds what's becoming imprinted in my mind, which is, what do you mean when you say angel? I want to compare Jesus to the angels. What do you mean? And this is where it's coming from. Okay, one more. The angel can also be Yahweh himself. Okay. God is in the burning bush talking to Moses. It says, the angel of the Lord appeared to him in the fire. And he looked and he said, the bush is not consumed. And Moses said, I got to stop. I'm going to turn aside and see what this marvelous sight is, why the bush is not burned up. And when Yahweh, and if you're the reader, you go, I thought it was the angel. Are y'all with me? Yahweh saw that he turned aside. God, Elohim, so they're all right here. The messenger and Yahweh and Elohim. And I'm telling you, there's only one thing you can do with this. You say messenger equals angel equals Yahweh equals Elohim. Exodus 13. This is the Exodus event. The Lord, Yahweh, it says, was going before them in a pillar of cloud and a pillar of fire by night to give them light, that they may travel by day and by night. ... A few verses. Exodus 14. The angel here, the word is Malach, of God, Elohim, who had been going before the camp, moved and went behind them. And you go, I thought you said Yahweh was going before them. And in the very next chapter you say, the angel is going before them. Okay. I'm not trying to confuse you, but y'all, this, I'm telling you, I'm convinced that the Hebrew author has got, this is all up in the brain of the writer here. And the author thinks that we have all this in our head. You know, like I read Hebrews in chapter 1 and I go, Jesus is better than the angels. And I go, of course he is. But do you see what I mean? It's much richer than just a surface reading of that. And if you have in your mind the hope of the coming one at the end of the days, and Jesus filling that role, and you know what it means to say Elohim and angel in Hebrew, then reading the text just carries, for me, more weight. Okay, so this is the last slide. I just wanted you to look at it one more time. I'm just going to read a couple of these for you and see if it will land a little bit differently, just to finish tonight. So I'm going to start right here in verse 2 and just read. I'll skip sections in the middle for time because we got 3 minutes to go. In these last days, he has spoken to us in his Son, the one from Judah, the one from the David line, the stone that will crush the kingdoms of the earth. Yeah, this is supposed to litter my mind. Whom he appointed heir of all things, through whom also he made the world. You mean he is Yahweh Elohim. And he is the radiance of his glory, the exact representation of his nature. He upholds all things by the word of his power. Spoken word. And God said, Elohim said, Elohim said, Elohim said. This is the unique Elohim. He is Yahweh Elohim, and he is the Son. When he had made purification of sins, he sat down at the right hand of the Majesty on high, having become as much better than the angels. All other Elohim and Malach messengers, this Son has now become the one, and he is above and beyond and greater than all of them. For to which of the angels did he ever say, "You are my son"? Now we're going to pick that one up next week, because how in the world does the author go from he's greater than the angels to the son of Psalm chapter 2? Well, the son in Psalm chapter 2 is the king from the line of David. And now all of the pieces from the last days stuff just locks into place. He is that one. This Jesus is that one. He's greater than the angels. You know, because he is the son of David. That's why. The chapter finishes, but to which of the angels has he ever said, "Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies a footstool for your feet"? This is a quote from Psalm 110. It is the most quoted Old Testament verse in the New Testament. Chapter. The Lord says to my Lord at the beginning of that chapter. Jesus is talking to the Pharisees. It's the last thing I'm going to say. Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, and they're having a dispute like they always did. And he said, "Tell me this. Whose son is the Messiah?" And they all go, "He's David's son." And Jesus quotes Psalm 110. He goes, "Well, it said," David writes, "The Lord said to my Lord, 'Sit at my right hand.'" So if he is in fact David's son, how is he also David's Lord? And it says there, it's hilarious. It says there, they didn't ask him any more questions. How can this one be both Lord and Son? So that's where we'll start next week. Thank you guys for hanging with me through it. More of this to come next week. Warning, red flag warning. Thank you, Lord, for your love for us, for Jesus, who is better. He's better. Help us to trust him with our lives.